Hi, my name is Georgia Poulikin. I'm a French lawyer. I am 45 years old. I have been a lawyer for 22 years and I am a yellow vest. I want to provide a testimony from France to the world about massive domestic repression in my country, France, and violence of our government against us, civilian, peaceful protesters, so-called yellow vests. I want to testify about what really happens in my country, because French media lie and propagate fake news in order to mislead you. Yellow vests are a peaceful, massive, non-political movement which protests about violent policy in France against poor workers, deprived persons, poor elderly people, disabled persons, especially children. That's not about fuel prices, fake news. That's about a president which hurts vulnerable people and intentionally impoverishes workers, destroys our country, our jobs, our educational system, our health system. Yellow vests are a humanist movement, a beautiful movement, and now we suffer massive domestic repression, and the only reason is that we want to protect our children, our future, our humanity, our dignity. This is about freedom, and government commit violations of fundamental human rights here in France. French police are equipped with guns, so-called defense ball launchers, often called flashballs, so-called less lethal weapons. Flashballs against civilian people. Projectors. A lot of peaceful protesters have lost an eye after being hit by these dangerous projectors, including young people, and that's illegal. For example, Fiorina. Fiorina, 20 years old. She lost her eye. Frank, 20 years old. He lost his eye. Jean-Marc, he lost his eye. Alas, he lost his eye. And this victim he lost his eye. And this victim and this victim. What danger did this girl, Fiorina, pose to deserve this. And that's not an accident. This is an illegal, systematic police practice. French police have caused numerous injuries, disfigurations, made them handicapped for the rest of their life, made them fall into a coma or die. Peaceful protesters, high school students, senior citizens, journalists have been among the victims. You can see these pictures on the website, French website Désarmons-les, which means in English, let us disarm them. That's not crowd control. That's a massive and bloody repression. And French government try to hide the truth. French police detain illegally peaceful protesters in spite of a lack of infringement and violent them. I testify that French police violent people without any indictment. For example, they locked a protester in a cell, handcuffed with a motorcycle helmet on the head, with no right to cancel, no right to make a phone call, no right at all. Justice, French justice, protect these violations. We have no rights anymore. We are isolated, endangered. We have no news. All media provide fake news, false accusations of violence against us, false accusation of anti-Semitism in order to discredit this movement. This movement is not politic. I am a lawyer. I am a yellow vest. I am peaceful. I am not anti-Semite. I am not homophobic. I am not a criminal. I like my country. I am a patriot. I have been a military woman. I have served my country. Now I am a lawyer, a humanist, and I want to tell you that all yellow vests citizens are peaceful and humanist as I am. Our government lie to you. Our government lie to the world. You need to know the truth, and we need you to propagate truth all around the world. Because we need you. We need you to propagate the truth. We need you. Because soon it could be your turn. Thank you for watching.
Well, welcome to UK Column Insight, and we're going to be covering the subject of the yellow vests in France, and I'm delighted to have here with me Georgia Poulican, who has come all the way from France. This is her first time in England, and she's come all the way to talk to us about the situation in France and what is actually happening with the yellow vest. So I'm going to say welcome to England.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, I am lucky enough to have spent some hours with Georgia, and last night we were able to sit down and really talk about what was happening in France. And I have to say, I was astonished to find out what's really taking place, because of course most people in the UK are not seeing any real information about what's taking place in France. Certainly the BBC is only covering the worst aspects of protests by the Yellow Vests, so there's a immense focus on violence, whereas the reality is that people are protesting all across France, and it involves many different social groups who are all extremely unhappy with policy, much of which is coming from Macron. So
Yes.
I have learned a lot. I've had the advantage of spending some time and talking to Georgia, but what we're going to do now is really to get her to tell her story about why she's here and to let viewers and listeners know what's really happening in France. So, Georgia, it's an amazing step for you to decide as a French lady that you want to get the truth out about what's happening in France with the Yellow Vest protests, and you've had great success with your own video clips.
Yes,
so
on YouTube.
On YouTube, some of those up to 150,000 views.
Yes.
That's really incredible. But you decided that you wanted to try and spread the information about what's happening.
Yes.
And that ultimately led to contact between you and another gentleman in England, Dave
Yes.
Barmby. And between the two of you, you decided to come to England.
Yes.
Yeah. So well done, and thank you. Now, just a little bit of background, because you're a very interesting lady. You were trained as a lawyer, and I think you've worked as 22 years as a lawyer.
Yes, I have been a lawyer for 22 years, and I have studied law during 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I am a woman of law, and that's why when I see the President Macron, who violate rights of all citizens in France, peaceful citizens who demonstrate peacefully in the streets, I decided to get involved in Yellow Vests movement to help
Right.
people, because they are defenseless. They don't know their rights, and their rights are constantly violated by police, by government, by president.
Right.
And that's
And your decision to help, against the background that you were a lawyer, that meant that you lost your job.
yes. I worked as a lawyer, a public lawyer, in a lot of institutions in France and ministries. So I know what happened inside the institutions, and I was fired because I think I was fired because I wasn't Macronist. I wasn't a supporter of Macron. 6 months before the presidential election, my boss, who was a judge in France, in a court in south of France, decided to destroy me because I went to a meeting of a candidate, an opponent in the opposition, called Benoît Hamon, and left-wing party. And I think my boss knew that. I wasn't in a political party. I wasn't just a supporter, citizen, and I know that that's a reason why I was fired. In this court, judges are Macronists.
Yeah.
All the court is Macronist, and I think now there is no independence in justice anymore.
Right. And you used an expression here. You said that the French police had forgotten their legal function to serve and protect.
Yes.
And of course, you come from a background You've spent time in the gendarmerie yourself.
Yes.
And your grandfather spent
Yes.
time.
And my father.
And your father.
And my
so
father.
You've been within the legal system.
Yes.
And you have a background which is establishment. You've been
Yes.
part of this organisation.
Yes.
But what you've witnessed in France happening around the yellow vest has made a huge impact on you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because my father was a colonel of gendarmerie, military police.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was a gendarme too. And I get involved in Gendarmerie Nationale as a reservist, operational reservist for 4 years. And I served people. My role and my pledge was to serve and protect people.
Right.
And I have never forgotten my pledge, but I think that French police forgot his pledge to protect people and to
Yes.
serve people. Now they hurt people instead of protecting them, and they serve and protect a policy, an unfair policy of a president, of a government, and that's not their first function. Their legal function. Function of police is to serve and protect people, not politic.
Right.
That's not
so
political.
this is a very important point. You feel that the police in France have now become
a political police.
Political police.
Yes. Yes.
And for the people watching and listening to this interview, just to put this into context, and we'll come back to some of this, but I just wanted to read out some of the statistics that we've got here on what's really happening in France. So we've got 220 seriously injured. We've got 22 people who've lost eyes. We've got 5 people who've lost hands. And we've got an 80-year-old woman killed after a tear gas attack.
Yes.
And one of the things that...
by the police.
By the police. And one of the things that we were looking at yesterday was that terrible picture of the lady lying in the street with a pool of blood from her head.
Yes.
And
an aged woman.
Yes. And
an aged woman in Nice.
So the police, who you fully understand made pledges to protect the people, are in fact now causing severe injuries to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And police don't act in defense. They don't have to defend themselves because yellow vests are peaceful demonstrators.
Yeah.
But now, since 2 weeks, now police decide to charge people, peacefully people who stands peacefully inside the movement. And they charge with shields and batons, and they hit people. They hit people, and this woman was in front of a policeman. He hit her, an old woman, age
80,
74.
Yeah.
And she fell out on the ground. She had a skull fracture.
Yes.
And with blood on the ground, she was severely injured. And police prevent street medics first volunteer to
give help.
To give help, prevent them to give help, to attend to her, and they arrested street medics. They arrested and they put them on custody, on police custody. And that's totally illegal to charge peaceful people and to prevent medical street medics to attend to her, to help her. That's totally illegal. And they try to create a fake news. No, that's not police who hit this woman. So government lied. Mayor of Nice lied. and we have proofs on video. That's the truth. Police decided to charge, and they hurt people, and they want to hurt people
And
now. That's
these-
not defense.
Yeah,
That's,
these are serious.
attack.
These are serious injuries.
Yes.
And we'll come back onto the types of weapons that the police are using.
Yes.
But I just wanted to give some more statistics here. In fact, let's recap on the injuries. 220 people seriously injured, 22 losing eyes, 5 losing hands. This is the result of grenades, I believe.
Torn off.
Yes. And then we've got 8,000 arrests. We've got 7,700 people who've been through police custody.
Yes.
We've got 1,796 convictions, and we've got 316 people who are now in prison.
Yes.
And one of the
without offences. You know.
Just explain that.
Yes, there are massive arrests of yellow vests, and Ministry of Justice gave a illegal directive to arrest yellow vests, to put them in police custody without even if they
they're not involved, but they're standing and watching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And to keep them in custody, to prevent them to go back to the demonstration.
Yeah. So they're held over Saturdays so that they can't attend demonstrations.
Yes, even without offences.
Right.
That's totally illegal.
Okay.
That's totally illegal, and that's a ministry that gave these directives. So now we have a government who act illegally, and peaceful people who are arrested. That's totally,
justice upside
crazy.
down. It's on its head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we come back to that. Now, many people, I'm sure people are shocked to hear about the level of violence and the injuries in France. But for people in England, Scotland, Wales, they will want to know why. Because we've had no background on the BBC. Well, the BBC doesn't report what's happening in France with any accuracy. So for most people here in this country, what caused the yellow vests to come onto the streets? What has been happening in France? Now, we know a little bit about Macron. We know that Macron's very much got a banking background, but you've pointed out that his policies have helped people with very large sums of money and immense wealth, the banking funds, the hedge funds. He's helped those people, but he's also brought in an increased taxation on people who are already poor. Tell us a bit more about.
Yes, but I would add something about what you said about the weapons, because that's very important.
Okay, but just, if you will, stick to let's set the scene now as to why these people have come on the streets, and then we'll go back and we're going to talk about the weapons in detail, because I think this is very important.
Okay. I have to recall the context of his election, maybe first.
Well, of course, people in this country understand very little about politics in France. They probably understand more about politics in America, because we're fed that. That's what the mainstream media talks about. But French elections, how the French political system works, we don't know anything. So tell us about Mr. Macron and.
That's not a political issue. That's not a political issue because he wasn't a politician before that. He was a banker. He comes from a financial world, and bankers often are called banksters now. You know. Relative to gangsters.
Yes.
And he was a member of the government, the previous government Hollande, the previous president Hollande, and he introduced himself as a left-wing politician, and he didn't convince a lot, and he was elected on a weak basis.
So he got 43%
of registered voters elected him.
Yeah.
And that was a basis of left-wing voters.
Right, and he said he described himself as left-wing liberal.
Left-wing liberal.
Yeah.
And I think
right.
ultra-liberal, and the first after his election, the first act that he made as a president was to appoint a right-wing prime minister, Edouard Philippe.
Right.
And his second act, he abolished a tax on capital, on big capital, impôt sur la fortune, for rich people.
Right.
So people felt surprised and betrayed, because that's a right-wing policy. That's right-wing policy. So
he gets into power describing himself as left-wing, and then when he's established himself in power, all of a sudden he's showing, we would say, showing his true colours. He's becoming right-wing, and he's implementing policies which are helping essentially rich people.
Absolutely, and increased burden taxes on lower incomes groups.
Right.
He decided to increase taxes on them, on poorest.
What sort of things did he tax?
He taxed diesel fuel.
Yeah.
He increased taxes on diesel fuels,
and food as well. I think some food.
Yes, and
electricity.
at the same time, prices of commodity products increased dramatically on food, electricity, gas, and it became very hard for people to go to work and to pay their bills. And they decided to go to the street to demonstrate their despair, because it was a suddenly aggressive policy against us.
Right, and that was a policy which is against a wide spectrum of people. So these are people on low incomes. They may be white, they may be black, they might be they might be Catholics, they might be Muslim. So anybody who was at the bottom end, who didn't have much money, Macron's policies were hurting those people.
Yes, and a lot of people, and taxes. It's an issue for every people.
Yes,
without any discrimination of a religion, of a political party. This is an issue. Taxes are an issue for every people.
Right, and diesel is a special problem. One of the things that you've said is that in France, because a lot of people have to travel long distances for work or even to go shopping. Yes. So the car is very important.
Absolutely.
And the diesel tax really hurt people.
Yes, and that's France is a rural country, and that's not a French issue. A lot of countries in Europe are rural countries. That's the same issue. When you tax diesel fuel, you prevent people to go to work, to go to visit their family, to go to high school. To go to hospital, and French people lost their purchasing power because of that, and they felt betrayed, they felt despised, because furthermore, President Macron, his attitude.
He's been very rude to people.
He's very rude, and there's an issue with his attitude, because he makes a lot of disparaging words or remarks on French people, and very rude.
Can you give us an example?
Yes, I was shocked when he, as a minister first, he went to Brittany and he met women workers in a factory, GAD factories, that's a slaughterhouse in Brittany, and he called them illiterate. That's an insult for women and for workers and for factory workers, and to be a factory worker or to be poor doesn't mean that you are illiterate.
Yeah.
You know, in my family, in my maternal family, a lot of women were factory workers, and they wasn't illiterate. They taught me everything. They taught me everything, and I am not illiterate. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother were workers in a tobacco factory.
That was
Morlaix,
La
manufacture du tabac, tobacco factory, and they were and they are intelligent women. That's an insult.
He's said that the French have lost their ability to work.
They lost the taste of effort. They are they don't
lazy.
They are lazy. They are cynical. They are refractory Gallics.
Right.
That's
right.
That's rude.
So this is the man who comes obviously from a very privileged background. He's had a very wealthy life. He comes in on one political agenda and then imposes a different one, and then he starts to attack ordinary people.
Yes.
And so
when he went to a railway station and he said, in a railway station, we meet successfully people, and we meet people who are nothing. People who are nothing.
So he's not shy at attacking the French people, and he's also said that the French don't have a culture.
Yes.
And as an Englishman, I find this just astonishing, because to me, the moment I go to France, you are immersed in a completely different culture. And that's the attraction for English people to go to France for their holidays, is to go somewhere different. And so I see a French culture, but apparently Mr. Macron can't see a French culture. It's almost like he despises people in France.
Yes. But we don't understand why.
Right. So all of these pressures came on people, and the fuel tax was probably the last thing for people to take. That was the spark.
Yes.
And people started to come onto the street. Was that organised, or how did it happen?
No, that wasn't organised. People felt totally desperate. Desperate. And they had no choice, no other choice. They decided to go on the streets to demonstrate, because they had no choice, and they want to be visible in the eyes of this president who ignore them and who despises them.
But for them to show that they were upset with the president. So you also had a spread of people. For example, you one of the things that you've said is that a lot of women came onto the streets. So people who had never protested before, but they were so outraged at what was happening, that people came onto the streets. Women came onto the streets, elderly people, as well as younger men and women.
Yes.
And the thing that I've really learned is, of course, this was happening all over France. If I listen to the BBC, which I do, but I don't enjoy it, but if I do listen to the BBC, of course, they are telling us that actually the yellow vests are only protesting in the big cities and they are violent. But you are telling us that those protests have been all the way over France, in small villages, in bigger towns.
Yes.
And in most cases, those protests have been completely peaceful.
Yes, that's a peaceful movement, that's a non-political movement, neutral movement, and including a lot of different people, different profiles, young people, elderly people, workers, unemployed, disabled persons. This movement began in the country, in the rural cities. They stand on roundabouts, to protest that began on roundabouts. And then the movement went to Paris. Because Paris, it's a big city, and you
that's
can
where
have
you make
a great
statement. That's where you make a statement.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a peaceful movement. And you have to understand that police provoked people to in the streets. That's not public order, because peacefully people in a street like Champs-Élysées Avenue, l'avenue des Champs-Élysées, this avenue were closed to the public, and you have yellow vests, and in front of them you have police. And when yellow vests want to exercise their constitutional right to demonstrate, that's totally legal. Peacefully. They want to march, to make a march. And when you have police in front of you, and when you decided to march, to move, so they decide to engage hostility with grenades, with LBDs, launchable defenses. That's very dangerous weapons, grenades, sting ball grenades, and also gas grenades, which are suspected to contain chemical products that are very dangerous
to your health.
Yes, and that's these weapons are international classified as war guns, war weapons.
These weapons that you're talking about, just to give some detail for viewers and listeners, I've got a little bit down here, and you're also talking about the rapid reaction detachment. So these are special policemen who seem to be particularly brutal, particularly hard. Yes,
they are ultra violent policemen. This group, in this group, policemen, they wear helmets. They are
masks.
They have sometimes armbands, and often wear civilian dresses, and sometimes they have civilian dresses and not without a badge, without service number. We don't know if they are policemen. You can't because you can't know this because they wear helmets, and they are ultra violent and without emotional feelings. They are very violent and very aggressive. And sometimes we have proof that some of these policemen, civilian dressed, are inside the groups of yellow vests.
Yes.
And they act as yellow vests, but they provoke riots and when they provoked riots, then they arrest people.
Everybody
yes,
gets arrested.
That they
right?
provoked.
No, this is a very interesting point, because we are already seeing these type of police appearing in UK, and these are not traditional police. So we're also seeing police who have got face masks.
Yes, face masks.
They've got no badges. They've got no numbers. They've got more or less military equipment on them.
Yes.
They've got batons.
Yes.
They've got CS gas. They've
and
got
war guns.
automatic rifles.
Yes.
And then they have body armour. So if for us in England, when we see these people appearing on the streets, this is something very different, because it was only a few years ago that we saw police in this country even carrying guns. Now we see our government is surrounded by policemen with machine guns in London.
Yes.
But we've also seen where there have been demonstrations, these same brutal sort of police appearing all dressed in black.
Yes.
So my mind says that somewhere there's training that's common to both France and UK on this. And we also see these people appearing in we call it civilian clothes. So they're in jeans, and they look as though they're ordinary members of the public, and they are getting in amongst demonstrations.
Yes.
And many people in this country say that in some of the demonstrations, at least, the police have helped provoke the violence.
Yes.
And here you are telling the same story from France. So,
and we call them agents provocateurs.
Yes.
They provoke riots.
Yes. Now you mentioned a date that Saturday the 16th of March was particularly significant because there was an increase in the violence.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about what took it from maybe a little bit of trouble starting in the protests, something happened and then it started to become violent? What was happening?
This Saturday, police changed his practice. Police decided to charge peaceful people in Nice, that's south of France, and they decided to charge with shields, with batons. And to charge without act of provocation from the yellow vest, to charge people who stand peacefully on a place inside the city, and they hit a policeman, hit an aged woman very violently, and
derrière ce monsieur. Oh, la femme, ce qu'ils lui ont mis. Regardez-moi ça. Regardez-moi, des papis, des mamies. Oh, arrêtez là. Oh, regardez la femme là. Oh, à terre, monsieur, à terre. Arrêtez. Laissez venir les médics au moins. Là, vous l'avez mis là-haut. Appelez le pompier là, appelez le pompier. Regardez, elle fait une crise, appelez le pompier. Appelez les pompiers. Appelez les pompiers. Oh putain. Regardez-moi ça. Faites venir les médecins.
A policeman hit an aged woman very violently, and she with his shield, and she fell down on the ground, and she was severely injured with blood on her head, and she was severely injured. And the policeman didn't help her, policemen prevent, street medics, first aid, voluntary first aid to attend to her and to help her, and they arrested street medics.
Right.
They arrested them to put them on custody.
Right, and this made a difference to people in the protest. The people in the protest reacted to what the police were doing on that.
We were very surprised about this, and we didn't understand why police decided to act like this, because when you see videos, you see that these people were totally peaceful and totally they exercise their freedom of demonstrate very peacefully to assemble. That's constitutional right, freedom, and police decide to charge. You hear the commandant to give this order, charge, and they run. They run with shields and batons, and they want to hurt all yellow vests on their course, on their road.
So we're seeing the police becoming more aggressive in their behaviour.
And it's illegal. It's illegal, totally illegal. They don't have the right. Even if these people would have the right to be there, the only act that police can make, that arresting them. They can arrest them, but they don't have the right to violate them, to hurt them. That's totally illegal.
Right. Now we will come back to this question of the law and peaceful assembly. Let's get out to our audience today the significance of the amount of ordnance, what the police have been using. So I've got a list here, and so that people know, to date there's been an expenditure of 12,122 LBD rounds.
Yes.
Now, can you explain what those rounds are? The LBDs?
The LBDs, that's a weapon that police can use as a defense. That's a defense weapon. That's with launch. That's a gun which launches projectiles that both very big balls.
We talk about rubber bullets being used in this country, but these are very dangerous things, and we know this from the injuries. So we call that less lethal weapons. Yes, but you can lose an eye.
You can lose a eye, and they don't have the right. They can't. Policemen can't legally aim the head. They have to aim the legs
and the lower body.
But they are not allowed to aim the head.
Je suis journaliste. Vous me laissez bosser. Je suis journaliste. Baisse ça. Baisse ça. Je suis journaliste. Tu baisses ça. Oh, j'ai le droit d'être là. J'ai le droit de faire mon boulot. D'accord?
Right.
But they aim the head.
And we know this because of the amount of injuries to people's heads.
That's not an accident.
Right. So
too many injured. Injured on the head.
Right.
Too many.
So if we put this in simple terms, we've got Macron's government suppressing peaceful demonstration in France by using very military, very brutal police.
Yes.
and they're firing 12,000 baton rounds at people. This is extraordinary statistics. They fired 1,000, let me use my glasses here, 1,428 tear gas canisters.
Yes.
And I spent time in the military myself, and as part of that training, they put you in a room and let you experience tear gas. And I know how painful tear gas is.
Yes.
And of course, if you are left breathing tear gas for any length of time, it can be very serious, particularly
Yes.
if you have breathing or chest
Yes.
problems.
Asthmatic.
Asthma, yeah. And then 4,942 sting grenades. So
Sting bullets.
these are the very small, short, sharp grenades. But of course, if you touch one or it lands against your leg and it explodes, you're going to lose a leg or a hand.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is more or less military. This is military equipment being used against
War
the French.
equipment.
It's war equipment being used against French people. So let me ask you a question. How should the law work in France? This is happening. How should the law work?
Yellow vests exercise their constitutional freedom of movement, of assembly, of opinion, and as I told you before, the only reason for the police to act is to maintain public order, for maintaining public order.
Yeah.
Or nobody asks the question, what's public order? When you are in an empty place like Champs-Élysées, for example, what's public order? What's public order? And I searched, because I'm a lawyer,
Yes.
I tried to search what is public order, and the most reputable specialist in constitutional law, Pierre Mazot, wrote this: the heart of this public order, in the strict sense of the word, seems to me to be the principle of security, guaranteed by the Declaration of 1789. There is no possible freedom in a society where individuals fear for security of the person. So, according to him, the constitutional basis for maintaining public order is fear for security of the person. But the police action is not based on security of the person, because the only people who are endangered and who are not in security are yellow vests themselves. So public order, what is public order? Public order is not protecting material of material damages, or when you have an empty place, the only people which might be injured and are yellow vests and by the police themselves. So what is the constitutional basis for the police to act and to violent people, peaceful people demonstrating in the streets? What is the constitutional basis to use war weapons against this person? I asked the questions, and in France, nobody asked the questions. And there is no disruption of public order, because they are peaceful. And the first act of provocation come always from the police. They exercise their freedom, they move, and police engage hostility with war weapons.
Right. So what do the senior legal people in France say about this issue? What does the commissioner? There's a commissioner's memorandum about public order. What does the state say about this situation? When you raise the question that the police are not behaving properly, what does the state say?
The police, and the Ministry of Interior consider that this is a legal action, but they don't justify these acts. They don't legally justify. Today, Ministry of Interior, government, don't have to follow the rules anymore.
Right.
They don't have to justify them. We are the state, we are the government, so we decided to hurt you and to stop you from demonstrating because you are rioters, you are disrupting public order, and you are violent. No, that's not the case.
So
Police is violent.
This is very serious in constitutional sense because you talked about the police becoming political.
Yes, political.
And now you're describing, now you're describing the state simply making up the law in order to counter. I would believe the state is very fearful that so many people in France are challenging what is happening. So you are now describing a dictatorship, a police state, and you're saying that French legal expert is pointing out that if people live in a state of fear for their persons, they don't have any true freedom.
Yes.
So
this
is
anymore.
A very serious change in France.
And some observers think that this is the real objective of this crisis, is to accustom people to live in a climate of violence, you know, to tolerate dictatorship. That's some observers tell that this is a provocation from the police and from the government to use strategy of escalation of violence to accustom people to be violented and to live in a state police in a dictatorship and to.
This is fascinating because in UK we are seeing we've seen a government policy which is called Prevent, where our government says we need to be very worried about terrorists in the UK, and many people are saying that they regard that policy as being designed to cause fear in people. You're fearful that somebody's going to attack you. You're fearful that this is going to happen.
Yes.
And we've also had an incident where we're seeing knife crimes. That's increasing.
Yes.
And this is now being used to say, well, we've got to have some new laws and we've got to have, the state has got to have extra powers in order to stop the knife crime. But there are many police who would say that the knife crime has increased because they are not allowed to do their job.
Yes.
So it's very interesting that what you describe in France, we can see some parallels in UK.
Yes. Yes.
Now, the police have acted like this. I believe that the French state has claimed that 5,000 police have been injured. Is that true?
Sorry.
That 5,000 gendarmes have been injured?
Yes. Yes. Some policemen and some gendarmes were injured in this conflict, of course, because.
But the state claims it's a lot. That it's a lot of police who've been hurt.
Yes, but that's like a civil war, and I think government seek confrontation between the two groups.
Right.
They want to create a climate of violence between police and gendarmerie and civilians.
Right. So we can say that the police are also being used by the state. Yeah.
I think that that's the case. I think that police and gendarmerie don't realize
Yes.
that government could use them to create this crisis and to escalate violence and to because after this, if this crisis would finish, would to come to an end,
yes,
what will happen after that? Because now we don't trust police anymore. That's you can we can have that's a point of no return. We won't never forgive police to
act for the state.
Yes, and to have not to hurt people.
Yes,
to hurt people, to injure young people. We have some young people who lost an eye because of them. They and police don't react about that. They should think about that and tell themselves that that's not
that's wrong. Yes,
there is using war weapons against civilian people. That's not usual. You never see that.
So have people in France tried speaking to it here in UK? If we have problems, who should we go to? We should go to our representative politicians. We should go to our local members of parliament. Who have you tried, or who have people in the movement tried to speak to in authority to ask for help? Have they spoken to political leaders, the unions?
Nobody help us in France. We are totally lonely. We don't trust politicians anymore.
Right.
We didn't ask politicians of opposition or to act because we don't trust them anymore, because Yellow Vests consider that there is a system and all politicians are a part of this system, and politician, member of parliament, members of government, president, also judges. We consider that there is no separation of powers anymore, because judges act differently from before. They decided to imprison Yellow Vests for severe sentences. Unusual
circumstances. Yes.
Unusual sentences.
Oh, sentences.
Penalties.
Yes.
That's very weird. They obey to Ministry of Justice. Or judges have to be independent. That's in the Constitution. Right. There is a separation of powers, and that's not the case.
Right. Have all the judges changed? Are there any judges that are good?
I don't know, but when we observe the decisions of judges, we have to admit that the judges obey to Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Interior, and Ministry of Interior, Castaner. He said 2 weeks ago to the policeman in front of the Arc de Triomphe, Place Charles de Gaulle, that there will be, he said, there will be severe penalties for this act of Yellow Vests.
Severe penalties.
Severe penalties.
Yeah.
But he isn't judge. How can
he change the law? How can he change the law? Right.
He's not. He don't decide of the penalties. He don't decide of to condemn people or not, if they are guilty or not. He's just a ministry that judges who have to decide of the penalties.
Constitution, because that's constitutional power.
Yes, that's the basis of democracy. Separation of power. There is judicial power who are different and distinguished from the executive power, government. Right. And now they act as if the two powers are reunited, and that's the Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Interior decide the penalties. Yeah. And they don't hide this. Right. They don't hide this. There is
This is a police state.
Yes, this is a police state, and they don't hide. They don't hide this situation. That's normal for us, for them. Not for us. For them, that's a usual situation. That's normal.
Yeah. So they're becoming more confident. They're doing things, and it's in the open. They're not hiding what they're doing.
Yes, but President Macron is like this. He's self-confident, and he never, except before the election, the presidential election. He don't hide that he despises French people, and he's the commander-in-chief, and that we are for him we are obstacles. Yeah. You know, obstacles for his policy. Yeah. And I think
just people who get in the way.
Yes.
Just trouble. Yeah.
Yes, and he decided, and he appointed himself the new prosecutor of Paris. He decided, no, I don't want this man. I want this man.
Right.
Obviously, in publicly, he decided that I want this man as the prosecutor of Paris. Yeah. And this man.
So there's no independence. There's no separation of powers again.
No. And of course, when Yellow Vests try to make complaints about police violences of police. They complained.
Yeah.
And prosecutor of Paris, he took the complaint and
just squashed it.
Yes.
Go away.
Of course, because Macron decided he gave him the title, the job, and he obeyed to the chief.
Yeah. And this is very, very dangerous. Now, one of the French newspapers has shown Macron in the colours of Nazi Germany, in the red and black. I can't remember the name of the newspaper.
Le Monde.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
The most famous newspaper in France.
So
made this cover.
Right. So that is a very hard-hitting cover to show the French president is becoming
like Hitler.
Like Hitler. That's quite a statement.
Le Monde, this famous newspaper, decided to make a cover when you can see Macron with red color, black and red color code of Nazi's flag, Nazi flag. And this is a copy of another poster by the same artist, and in the first poster, this is Hitler, naturally with his color code, Nazi flag, and
and now Macron is put in the same image, similar image.
The same image, and everybody was surprised by this cover because it's Le Monde, the most famous newspaper in France, considered Macron as a Nazi, like Hitler. That's the cover, and some observers consider that Macron represents the far right wing, the ultra-liberal far right, who are very violent and more violent than the nationalist one.
Right.
And
this is dangerous. This is dangerous.
And that's not the first time that there are rumors about that, because his new party before the presidential elections called En Marche.
Yes.
En Marche, and the slogan of his presidential campaign was "La France en marche," France
moving forward.
Moving forward, and that's the same slogan than a Vichy, a state of Vichy slogan. You know Vichy in
Vichy,
the 40s,
yes.
Nazi state. That was a slogan.
Right.
That you can see on the internet, on the poster of regime of Vichy.
Que vous, partout, vous alliez le faire gagner, parce que c'est notre projet. Vive la République!
While you're telling me this, in my mind, we have the situation in UK now where Theresa May, our Prime Minister, and before that David Cameron, are signing deals, military deals with this French regime. So you are explaining to us that many people are being suppressed by a dictatorship forming.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, and this is the organisation that Theresa May and David Cameron are saying we're going to work in partnership with. They've even said that UK and France are going to share government structures. We'll come back onto that. So let me ask you another question. What do the Yellow Vests want? What would the Yellow Vests like to achieve?
Okay, Yellow Vests want first more democracy, or to restore democracy, because they want at the beginning they want to get their purchasing power back. Yellow Vests want to restore tax of big capital, to have a more fair fiscal justice, more fiscal justice.
Yes.
They want to live with their work. They want to
be able to earn enough to
Yes.
live and run their families and enjoy
normally.
life.
Enjoy life, and they want more democracy. They want to introduce into law the referendum on popular initiative. You know, that's like in Switzerland.
Yeah, in Switzerland, people can vote on serious topics. The people get the vote.
Yes.
Right.
That's a referendum d'initiative citoyenne on all matters, because they don't trust politicians anymore. They consider that members of parliament don't represent them anymore.
No.
And that's another part of.
And it doesn't make any difference what party those politicians are. Right?
Yes. And they want to get the power back, and because they consider that president, government, and members of parliament don't act for citizens now. They act for private interests, and not for public interest. And they don't use public money for the public interests. Because we have public services which are in a dreadful state, hospitals, schools, and we don't understand why there is such a taxes burden, and on the other side we have public services which are destroyed.
Yes.
We don't understand where is the money? Where does
the money go?
Where does the money go? Where?
Right.
We don't understand that, and we can observe that they don't use governments and don't use the public money for us.
Okay, so if we make
we want to pay taxes. We want to pay taxes, but we want to live better with these taxes.
Yeah.
We want to get more public service, more quality, more better schools, better hospitals, better. But
so these are very simple. These are
Yes.
very simple, very reasonable things.
Yes,
These
that's
are,
democracy.
This is democracy. So people now in France, the yellow vests,
Yes, are
saying
very
we want
reasonable.
democracy back.
Yes.
We want right.
And that's their main demands are very reasonable. That's why you live. You are a citizen, and you pay taxes to get public services which
Work,
and we don't want to pay private services instead of public services because we pay for that.
Right.
So and Macron government is selling all our public services. He's selling airports, selling barrage, electricity structures.
Yes.
He sells, with woods forests.
The forests. Yeah.
Forests. He sells
ports.
everything in
Yes.
France. In France, we call that liquidateur judiciaire, judiciary. He sells everything to pay debts.
Yes.
He say all the country like this.
Yes.
All
And
our richness.
Yes.
Is
being sold.
Yes.
Yeah.
But where does the money go? Where does money go?
That's
We
also
ask the
happening.
question.
That's also happening here in this country, and we have asked questions about where the money is going and what public property land is being sold, and the government doesn't want to answer.
Yes.
So, what about the media? What has the media reported in France?
Media don't report the demonstration with fairness, loyalty.
Yes.
They provide false allegations and false fake news about yellow vests. They say, for example, that they are responsible for the violences. They provide images and videos
pictures,
about a little part of the demonstration where sometimes there are rioters who breaks some shops or material damages.
Yeah.
But and they decided that yellow vests are violent. That's not yellow vests. People who break shops and everything, that's not yellow vests. Yellow vests are peaceful demonstrators with
So
there are rioters in all demonstrations. And media
focuses on them.
Yes, focuses and provide fake news, propagate fake news in foreign towards foreign observers, especially when you are foreign people and you go on Google. And you search what happened in France,
yes.
You see anti-Semitism. Yellow vests are
so this is a label that has been put on what's happening, but
the lie.
It's a lie.
That's propaganda.
Yes, propaganda. That's the word.
Political propaganda for President Macron. For government, that's propaganda. They don't do that. They don't do their job. Make their job. They are not neutral. They are the voice of the master. They are the voice of the president, and that's. So journalists and reporters of mass media are not welcome in the demonstrations now.
Does the mass media report the injuries that people losing eyes?
No. They don't report injuries. They don't talk about this. Absolutely not. They report they report the reaction of members of government. You see the Sunday and Saturday night after the demonstration, because we demonstrate every Saturday. We have been demonstrating for 4 months.
Right.
4 months, and every Saturday night and every Sunday, mass media show reaction of members of government. You see a Ministry of Government say yellow vests are violent. I decided to replace the Préfet de police, the chief of police. I decided to deploy army because he deployed an army corps, the Sentinel, called Sentinel, which is an army corps. Their job is to defend people against terrorism.
Yeah.
And they deploy this army corps against yellow vests.
Yes.
That's totally...
right. So
government consider that we are terrorists.
Yes. This is a very important point. And again, we're seeing that occurring in this country. How many people do you think are protesting across France? You say on Saturday people are still protesting. How many people?
We don't have we don't have the figures, because Yellow Vests, that's not an organization. There are spokesmen, but there is no leader, because we don't want any leader. We want democracy, and democracy, that's not a leader who decides everything. And a lot of persons, but Yellow Vests, that's not only people who demonstrate in the streets. That's also people who are at home that propagate real news about Yellow Vests, who are sick, who can't go to a demonstration for any reasons. Yellow Vests are a massive movement.
Right. So I know this is right. No, this is difficult, and I understand that you're explaining it's not one organisation. So, are we talking hundreds of thousands of people? Are we talking millions of people? Hundreds of thousands, certainly.
I think that when you watch, sondage, when you electoral opinion.
Yes, electoral polls.
Tests.
Polls. Yes.
Yes. There is a lot of persons who support Yellow Vests.
Right.
So I think we are millions.
Right.
I think we are millions.
Yeah.
Because we have been demonstrating for more than 4 months. So that's not a coincidence. We are a massive movement.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we should have stopped this. There are a lot of people every Saturday who replace the other Yellow Vests. We are millions.
Right.
We are millions.
Right, Georgia, you have done a fantastic job talking about what's happening in France. Your English has been excellent. And let's just think a little bit about, you're here now and you've come all this way to tell the story about what's happening in France. What would I like to say? I'm thinking, what could we do to help people in France who are beginning to raise awareness for the fact that the government has changed, the constitution has changed, the police are being violent. I think that our audience and people in this country can do a lot, because one of the most important things is to share the information.
Yes.
If the mainstream, the mass media won't tell the truth, then we need people on social media to tell the truth. We need people on social media to share the images, to show the facts, to show the real injuries. And that is a very simple thing that many people could do in UK, many people could do in other countries. But you've also come here, I think, to warn us that what is happening in France is so dangerous. If people are dying, if people are losing eyes and hands as a result of the change in the political structure, what you're telling us is a warning that if it's happening in France, it can happen in this country. So we need to do everything we can to spread that message. And we also need to help explain to people why these things are happening. It cannot be a coincidence that many of the things you're describing happening in France are happening in UK as well. We are seeing the government taking power which it doesn't really have. We're seeing the police being politicised. We're seeing secret courts. We're seeing the government making everybody fearful of terrorists and crime so that people are very concerned about their lives. So these similarities, I think we need to do everything we can to warn people. And what I would like to say to the people who've been watching this interview is that, Georgia, you have done so much. You have been challenging the system using your legal experience, your experience in the law. That's cost you your job. Now, you've said that you lost your job as a result of the influence of Macron, and you can be very confident in that, but of course we don't know exactly what did it, but the reality is you've lost your job. You're working very long hours.
That's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence, no. You're working very long hours. You're pushing out these wonderful videos, which are clearly, what's the word? They're clearly making people take notice, because 150,000 views on a video is very good. But you are working very hard. So I can say to our audience that you need help. And obviously, Georgia needs help from people inside France to help her get the message out, to challenge the system. And I think what we'd like to say to the viewers and listeners is that we need people in this country, in the United Kingdom, to actually stand up and give support. And that support, of course, has to be peaceful, but it's about reporting the truth, it's about challenging governments, and it's about standing up for people who are vulnerable, which is where you started in the gendarmerie. You said that you joined in order to protect people.
Defenseless people.
Defenseless people. And that's
we are very isolated in France. We feel isolated, whereas I think that's an European issue. I think that's it could be your turn very soon. That's not a French issue. That's an European issue. And I think that's a scenario who could happen in other countries in Europe. And I think that's very important to propagate the information, the truth, because nobody knows what happens in France, and that's that's purposely secret. The media help to keep that secret, and why? Because they don't want the other people in Europe to know about that, because soon it will be their turn. So yes, we need you, the other people of Europe,
of other countries,
and UK, and UK especially because of Brexit. we are in the same situation toward the police, toward the state police, toward we're in the same situation.
Power. We're challenging
we are
power.
Isolated. We have no financial resources to fight, because we are some groups in France, and we try to fight against this massive repression with our own means, but we
you don't have, I'll just add a little bit here, because I know many people look at the power of the state, and the state has all the money, it has all the constitutional power, it has the police, it has the weapons, it has the rubber bullets.
Yes.
And a lot of people say, well, what can we do? But one thing is very clear, is that these people, they're very powerful when they're in their palaces and their positions of power, but actually they're very scared of ordinary people, the people on the street. They're very frightened of.
Yes.
And
that's
so
panic.
So when ordinary people demonstrate that they know exactly what the government's doing, this creates huge fear in the government.
Yes.
When you can say, we know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So spreading the truth and the facts about what's happening, this is a very important thing, I think, in order to bring these people down.
Yes.
And if we don't bring them down, what you're saying very clearly is you need to wake up in UK, because what's coming next is a full police dictatorship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we know what they're doing.
What they're doing.
We know what they're doing, and know where the camera, but we know what you're doing to us.
Yeah. Georgia, brilliant. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You've done very well.